Hi, my name is Andy Vitek. I'm a financial advisor, and I've been an advisor for over 28 years. We're always looking to expand our business in the most efficient way we can. Well, I've known George Buzaglo for over 20 years. So George invited me to one of his workshops, which I attended. I was floored. Afterwards, I asked George to coach me one-on-one. So applying these techniques to my practice, I've literally seen a 30% increase in my business, and I attribute that to these techniques. What I'd like to do is share one technique of many that George and I have worked on. Enjoy. George and I have been friends for many years. I'm really excited to share with you what George has developed for financial advisors. I think it's revolutionary, and I think it could change the way advisors deal with clients. You know, George, before we get started, would you mind telling us a little bit about your background?
Oh, sure. I have a PhD in organizational psychology, and originally my training is in anthropology and sociology, so a little bit of a difference. Today, I am a consultant. I have an independent firm, and my core competence is how to align behaviors to strategy. So in our case, if a financial advisory firm decides that they want to actually improve the customer experience in the relationship between advisors and clients, the question is, what are the behaviors that we need to develop to get there? And actually, my whole work is around that topic. I've worked in a variety of different industries, in high tech, in chemicals, in pharma, and obviously in the financial services industry. And I've been working in that industry since 2001. To try to give you a sense of what I've been developing, I would ask you to try to think about one question. When you get together with colleagues, is there one or two topics that seem to be recurring in terms of people saying, this is so hard for me, this is really making my life difficult?
Yeah, this is a very common denominator within our industry. And I think it's, you have clients, generally you don't have clients your whole career, the same clients, it's just a rotating, and your goal is to keep those clients for as long as you can, and do the best job you can for them. But the industry is the industry.
So more specifically, what do you need to do? What are the difficulties in keeping a client for a long time?
I just think some clients need change. Some clients are maybe we present the same thing every quarter. Here's what your performance is. This and we get in that routine where you need to change it up a little bit.
So there is no value at some point. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say there's no value. There's always
value declines.
I think the value declines. It's like that honeymoon period. You really do a good job for the first few years, and then okay, they're good, they're stable, and it's on autopilot. You touch base with them every so often. But I do think I just need some ideas on how to maintain and how to rejuvenate those relationships.
What else?
How to motivate a client into continuing that financial plan. To continue that process all throughout the relationship. And how do you ensure? I guess this would be another question. Would be, how do you ensure that they're doing that?
Yeah.
On their end.
That they're doing their hand.
You're doing your part, but you can't control that other end. Yeah.
Now, think about those three questions. Is there anything common between them? Do you see any common denominator?
I do.
Which one?
I.
And who is I? The financial advisor.
Financial advisor. We're in the center, right?
Yeah, and that's a very heavy burden to carry.
That's a very heavy burden, and truthfully, in trying times, it's in market volatility, it becomes a very heavy weight.
Yeah. I just want you to think about the difference between being a tenant in an apartment and owning that apartment. So, for example, if you have a leak from the roof and you're a tenant, what do?
Call the owner.
And if the owner doesn't do anything after 2 weeks?
You move.
That's right. Okay. So, Andy, if you are the owner now, what do you do differently?
You have the roof inspected periodically.
Yeah.
And you fix the roof.
And you fix the roof right away.
Yeah, before it becomes an issue.
Good. So if you think about tenant versus owner, what is easier to work with a client who is a tenant on his financial plan, or a client who co-owns the financial plan with you.
Clearly the co-owner slash owner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the whole point I'm trying to figure out is how to bring the client to a point where he feels co-ownership of the account plan with the financial advisor. And the drawback is that if you are so keen in making everything nice, perhaps you're not leaving enough space for the client to take co-ownership of that relationship. In other words, in the best case scenario, if you do everything and you're responsible, the client may become passive. In the worst case scenario, if you do everything, the client may become transactional. What is there that you can use to help you balance a little bit more that relationship so that you're both co-owners? And I think that one of the issues that you want to think about is really the topic of framing. In other words, how do you frame for yourself what you're supposed to do? And framing is a very powerful psychological concept. Let me give you an example. A guy comes to his religious advisor, not his financial advisor, and asks him a question. He says, tell me, is it okay if I smoke while I'm praying? And the advisor says, absolutely not, don't even think about it. It's disrespectful. And so the guy scratches his head and says, but tell me, is it okay if I pray while I smoke?
That's a totally different one.
Exactly. So the way you frame the issue is the way the issue is really there for you.
Right.
And I think that where we're going with this is that in a co-owned relationship, both the advisor and the client own the success. But it doesn't mean that they do the same things. Because for the client to actually do a financial analysis of the markets and make the right decisions about how to balance portfolio between bonds and securities and how to, what financial instruments to invest in and how to mitigate risk and how to manage that risk, etc. That is something that they're not equipped to do. What
true.
they know is what they need. And even that is not always the case. So when I say that you co-own the relationship, it means that ahead of time, when you start the relationship, you discuss what's the financial advisor's responsibility in this work and what is the client's responsibility. And if the relationship works well, it means that each one is doing their job.
Right. So totally separate jobs, but still that client feels more attached to that plan, even though it's more internal, that their ownership is.
The strength of the relationship between client and financial advisor is that each one is carrying the piece that he is an expert in.
George, that brings another question. You know, when I hear you talking about this, so let's classify the advisor doing all the work now as an expert.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the difference between the expert advisor and what the client in a joint relationship or co-owning it, let's call them the trusted advisor. The trusted advisor model. So the client thinks of you as his trusted advisor. What's the difference between that?
The expert is there to project gravitas and incredible knowledge in the industry, whereas the trusted advisor is there to create a really powerful collaboration between him and the client.
And that's interesting because I find many of my clients want to be told because that's what they're used to. Tell me what to do. I just deposited money in my account. Tell me what to do. Instead of us asking what, and it's simple. But I do think that expert versus advisor, trusted advisor, there is a big difference.
Well, because once you think about it, and you consider the tools and the methods that are used typically in the consultative approach, then you can make a clear decision. Okay, with this client, I'm going to go with the expert approach because anything else would not work. Whereas if you are talking about with a client who is more prone to conversation and is an intelligent person who really wants to get into the makings of the financial plan, then use the consultative approach. Typically, with the right type of client, it becomes much more powerful, and it addresses the issue that you identify at the beginning of this conversation, which is how do you take the eye of the financial advisor away from the center stage? You see?
And I think that's a positive part of what you're trying to do is removing that. It's simple, it's not practiced often,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's valuable information. But what's the real impact between these differences?
I think that when you work with the trusted advisor model, you're creating a much more powerful and positive client experience in the relationship with the firm. And what that does is it enhances client satisfaction, and that immediately has an impact on longevity, which you were talking about beforehand.
Right.
And there is a clear connection between longevity and financial results.
Absolutely. And generally, the clients, when a client leaves, departs the relationship, it's at generally a bad time. So performance, if you stretched it out a little longer, the performance would be there. You know,
Yeah.
they're leaving when the market's down. They're leaving when
Yeah.
they feel, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that asking the client that, what they really want, because how many people really do know what they want? But it forces them to search and to dig deep to identify what they really want.
Yeah.
So it's helping them in more you know, beyond just the investments. It's helping them identify what type of investor they are. It's
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And do you have any like concrete tools that you could tell me about?
Actually, yes, we have adopted a number of tools from the consulting industry to actually be adapted to the financial advisor industry. And I guess that one of the most central ones are the communication tools one-on-one between the client and the advisor.
Mm-hmm. George, now you lost me.
Okay.
Communication is our bread and butter. I mean, we're communicating with clients, we're communicating with family, you know, so communication is the core of our business.
Yeah.
So tell me what you mean.
So why don't we do a role play?
Sure.
Okay. So can you think of a situation that you had in the last couple of months where you tried to convince the client or the prospect of something and you were not successful in doing so?
Recently, yes. I had a young gentleman that recently out of school, he had a good salary today, but it wasn't consistent. He was making good money, but he was concerned about that, you know, continuation of that. So in speaking with him about investing, to keep the money liquid, I said, well, you know, you can afford $500 a month. Let's start putting $500 a month away, and in so many years, you know, you can have a nice nest egg there.
Did it work?
It didn't work.
Okay, so let's role play it.
Okay.
Let's see how it would go.
All right.
I am the client.
Mr. Client, I think it would be great for you. I think you have the income, and I think putting away $500 a month would be nothing but advantageous for you, where you can have X number of dollars in 10 years.
Yeah, and you know, that is true, but I am in the gig economy. Today I'm making lots of money, and perhaps in the next 3 months I won't make a cent. So how can I commit to putting $500 a month away every month when most of my life I'm dealing with cash flow issues?
Right. The earlier you start, the better off you're going to be later on. That money has time to grow.
Yeah, I don't think you get it. I mean, you know, when I struggle for the last $3 at the end of the month and I don't have any money to actually pay the bills even, how do you want me to think about it? You know what? I think it's a good idea. Let me come back to you once I have a stable income.
And that's kind of the scenario that was created.
Oh, really? Okay, good. Again, let's role play the situation again, but this time instead of doing what you did, which is to tell me, you will be the client and I will be the advisor, and I'll use the questioning method and I will ask you questions.
Okay.
More specifically, I'm going to use one type of question which is called the high yield question.
The high yield question.
Yeah,
Okay.
the high yield question is a question that is not so much meant to get an answer, but is meant to have the other person think about the issue differently. So I am the advisor now. So
Okay.
Mr. Client, thanks for coming. So the reason I wanted to talk to you is because people like you are the best candidates to start saving now at this point in your life. And I hear you don't have a financial plan or a savings plan, and I wonder, why is that?
Well, the problem I see is in my life right now is I'm in the gig economy. So I do a job here, I do a job there. So my income is very unstable.
Yeah. So it seems like what bothers you is that you don't have control over your income situation. Is that correct?
That's what it seems like, yeah.
So my question is there any part of your financial life over which you do have control?
I would say the only thing I have control over is my spending.
Ah, interesting. So do you know right now where you're spending your money?
I mean, I have rent, I have food and electric, and so besides that, no, not really.
So what would be the impact of actually keeping track of your expenses?
Well, if I kept track of it, then I could break it down into what is going for necessities and what is discretionary.
And how that would help?
Well, then I could kind of tweak the discretionary, I guess, right?
And would do what with what's left over?
And then I could put that towards savings.
Interesting. So what you're talking about is really doing a financial plan.
I guess you're right. It is a financial plan, yeah. Yeah, tell me more about it.
Sure, absolutely. So Andy, how did the role play work? Does that reflect reality?
In my world, probably not, because I would have went through all the scenarios about savings and compounding, and and we would have went through a cash flow analysis and that for them. But I think that drew that potential client in more to that financial plan.
So what was the major difference in the behavior of the client in the second one versus the first one?
It was much different, because I was telling you what you should be doing because of your age, and hey, we could tweak it because of your income and that, and not really hearing what the client was saying.
And how do you feel the client feels at the end of this meeting?
Well, I can tell you how I felt with you asking those questions. I felt more engaged and felt better and felt like a goal that I could accomplish, rather than it was a positive end rather than a not so positive end.
Yeah. So here we go back to the beginning of our conversation. Here what you created through the questioning is a co-owner of the financial plan,
right,
as opposed to tenant on the financial plan. And if you notice, the first conversation we role played ended up with, okay, interesting, let me call you back when it's time.
Interesting. George, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate your information. This is extremely valuable, and I think I know my friends in the financial industry can greatly benefit from this.
Hi, this is George Buzaglo. Let's recap the main points we covered in the video. First, you are not alone. When in doubt about how to provide new value, how often to meet, or what to talk about during meetings, just ask your clients. They will know. Second, consider framing the relationship with your clients as a partnership for success. Define clear roles and responsibilities for you and the client, and clear performance criteria for the financial plan. This will increase your clients' buy-in and commitment and improve their experience in working with you and with your firm. Third, listen to your clients. This is probably the most important skill you'll ever need. Shifting from talking to listening is not that difficult. Just take genuine interest in your clients as people. Ask yourself, what do I need to learn about them to create a financial plan that will make a real difference in their lives? When this is your mindset, your clients will notice right away and will appreciate it. Finally, shift from telling to asking. I have a challenge for you. Next time you meet with a client, replace some of the things you want to tell them with questions you need to ask them to learn about them. Then sit back and notice how your meeting becomes more effective. The impact is amazing. I am sure you'll appreciate it. Once you have tried it, feel free to give me a call. I would love to hear how it worked for you.